Hey there, everybody. Well, we made the progress we were hoping to. It didn't take too long, but we got the entire power steering system out. And I have to go through this whole manual steering rack, make sure everything's good to go. But they are rather new tie rod ends, and I believe the inner tie rods themselves are decent, but we're going to pull back each of the boots and double check. I know that the internal bushing on the passenger side is worn out on this guy or missing. So we have everything we need to conquer that before we reinstall as well. And then the car will have perfect leak-free manual steering, like all was intended. So this video idea comes up fairly often. You know, what all does it take to convert a manual rack car to power, or vice versa? As it turns out, not much. We've had people do these in the past, and depending on the year and model that you're looking at, the bolt hole pattern for the racks themselves, you know, these two hangers, they each have 2 bolts or 4 bolts in total. That hanger bolt spacing can vary. Sometimes by just the tiniest bit, sometimes by enough that you have to get a little creative with, say, drills or hot pliers and a vise to make things work as you want. But in this instance, things are just going to be a direct swap. And I'm quite pleased about that. So why am I doing this? Well, changing from power steering to manual steering, the biggest thing is maintenance intervals. Not that changing power steering fluid is a turd or anything, no. But again, that's me making the assumption that people actually do that. I don't think anyone actually changes for their power steering fluid. But the bigger thing is the space that this pump occupies. This pump occupies this space on the engine. Up top, yeah, I think up top. And then down below is where the smog pump resides. Now, both of those being there, they do add up to a little bit of weight. The whole power steering system weighs a good, let's say this whole manual rack here. This guy weighs roughly 10 pounds. This whole thing, the rack itself, weighs more than that. And then there's still the pump, which alone is about 15 pounds, plus all the hoses and hard lines, etc. And then the hanger for the pump itself. So the pump and the hanger is the whole everything else on the power steering system. It's a good 25-30 pounds more than the manual one. Plus, it occupies a lot of space underneath the hood, making maintenance of other systems more difficult. I've shown in other videos that if you remove the power steering pump and the smog pump, you actually have a clean shot up top, mind you, to the oil drain bolt, from up top of all places. Otherwise, you can also access the oil filter not too hard from the side. But I prefer switching to manual, removing all the EGR and everything else, and then you have a clear shot, if you can imagine, through the sea of junk to your oil filter. The white one I have residing down there. Normally, that is the end game. That is what we're after. And by such, we have to turn that giant mound of parts into this Martian handful of parts. That's right, we're changing out a whole lot of components to get down to just 1, 2, 3 separate pieces and a handful of bolts amongst them all. So, what do you need for this conversion? Well, ideally you need access to a donor car, one of your choosing. Now, preferably you're going from power to manual. Now, I can't stop you from going to manual power other than to verbally assault you the way you deserve. There is no reason whatsoever. Not a single reason to convert from manual to power steering, okay? Please stay with me now. There is no reason to go from manual to power. These cars turn so dang easy with manual steering. If you can't handle that, you can't, I don't think you could probably even turn a doorknob. I think that's what we're getting at here. The power steering system, when they're in working order, you can't even tell that they're power steering because they perform no better than the manual rack. There is one mechanical difference in that the gear ratio for the power rack is different than the manual rack. With the manual rack, it's 3.4 turns from lock to lock, but on the power rack, I believe it's something like 2.8. I'll put that info in the description, along with some of these weight figures and the thorough parts list. So there's no reason to go from manual to power. You're not going to gain anything except reduce space in your engine bay, you'll suck a little bit of power off of your engine, and add a whole lot of places where you have leaks. You're really, really making your oil change a lot harder, because all of these lines, now I should hold the camera the way they'd be mounted in the car so you can see how much room they actually do take up. All of those lines get in the way of changing just the oil filter, before we even talk about any of the vacuum lines on the bottom of the intake manifold, any of the coolant lines that go in and around the engine, any of your sensors that you have in the back of the engine, or any sensors you have along the face of the firewall. A lot of stuff like that. So, what all do you need to do the conversion? Well, you will need access to the whole car. You don't need the whole car for your parts list, but you need access to the whole car to make sure you're getting all of these said parts. So everything you see in front of me is what's different between these. They may bolt into the same exact place, but the passenger side hanger is different between these. They do also use different tie rod boots or bellows, whatever you want to call them. On the manual racks, the passenger side is usually different size than the driver's side, but be sure to check that before you order it. There are a few versions of these manual racks depending on the years you're looking at. Now, they will all interchange across all the cars, but you need to know what year it is for when you go to order parts. The tie rods themselves are different down at the bases inside these boots depending on the years that you're using, and they will not interchange. You can't be using, let's say, 84 tie rods on an 81 rack. There was a change somewhere 483, and I think there was one later in like 86 or something, possibly. Again, please do double check before you do anything. Where there was a change where they changed the inner rack gear itself to be threaded differently on the ends so they could use different tie rods, and as a result it's a different rack and different tie rods. They interchange if you're using the two parts as a matched pair, but you can't mix match the parts. That's what I'm getting at. The tie rod ends themselves, the little ends that go to the knuckles, those are identical across all cars, regardless of trim, year, what have you, okay? Also know that the tie rods themselves are usually different from the power racks to the manual racks, as are the bellows I've mentioned, and the one mounting ring, or bracket, whatever you want to call it. Next, the boot. There's a big old boot that goes between it seals between the lower part of the steering column to the firewall. And the boot is different from manual to power. The manual one is a smaller guy and it's concave, or yeah, let's just say concave. And then the power one, it has the same exact bolt pattern, same footprint, but it's convex. and it seals around a unique plastic seal around this lower part of the lower steering column shaft, steering shaft. Let's go with that. Then while we're talking about that, the steering shafts themselves are different and they do not interchange. Yes, I know, they are the same length. Yes, I know. The top half male end is the same. Yes, I know. The joints are all angled the exact same. Yes, I know the upper half of the columns are the same. But if you didn't know, there's a substantial difference between the input shafts of each of these racks. The manual rack has a much smaller input shaft than the power rack. You can see that from here. So if you don't have the right one of these, you're not doing the conversion. So you have to remove these from the steering column, at which point it becomes a perfect time to actually remove the steering rack itself. Removing it from the manual car is pretty easy, simply due to the boot and the fact that there's not all these extra lines. The power steering system, there is one line, that hard line that loops around underneath the car alongside a brake line that goes to the rear. That is for cooling the brake fluid as it circulates throughout the system. But then removing the pump itself is a chore. These are the two brackets, and that shiny aluminum one, that one bolts onto the motor mount. So when you go to remove that, you need to have the engine hoisted. So do keep that in mind. This plate next to it, that is the tension plate or rotating plate, whatever you want to call that. That is how you tension the belt on your power steering pump. And you have to remove that as part of the mounting bracket and the pump itself. Be very careful when you're doing anything with these pumps. The top ends of them are different depending on the year and model you have, probably engine configuration as well. Some of them will have the extended filler neck. Some of them will only have just this big 2-inch cap right here at the bottom without the extension, and the cap, that big fat cap itself, is the dipstick, not a thin long extension, to boot. So do keep that in mind. The pumps, I believe, are generic 80s Ford, but don't quote me on that. I wouldn't be surprised if there are variances. But I do know that the cap itself is more or less universal 80s, 90s Ford. With the power steering system, should you be going to it instead of from it for any crazy reason, there is an electrical plug. Now, again, don't quote me on this. I haven't dealt with too many power steering cars yet, but I believe that plug is part of a kickdown for the carburetor. So when you're using the power steering, the engine idle speed ramps up a little bit. I think that's how that works. If it's not that, then that must be for a warning light in the gauge cluster, but I don't believe there is such a thing for the power steering. So that's kind of all there is to it. Once you've removed all these things, you just replace them with the new ones. That's really it. It's pretty simple, but yeah, you should be realistic if you're attempting this. If you have a power steering car and you're converting to manual, just remove your engine and transmission. It's going to be a lot easier for you, or at the very least remove the head and the intake manifold and exhaust manifold. That way you can hover over the engine and you have a wide swatch of access back here. Otherwise, if you can remove the whole works, you can crouch down inside there and remove everything as you have to. It's again, very simple swap and straightforward. So my next step is I'm going to rebuild the inside bushing. It takes just a little bit of work with the Dremel tool and the grinder, and then I'll to get these boots off, they have these silly wire clamps. So we'll snip those guys off, put on new screw type clamps, threaded hose clamps. We'll be able to call those good. And then that should have this all good to go when we're all done. So I'll be able to enjoy the better feel, which I totally forgot to even mention. The feel of the power steering is quite vague, but believe it or not, it's actually harder to turn the power steering cars in perfect working order than is the manual one. And this is because you've got all this extra added weight that your power steering now has to, assist steering for. Then on top of that, you are sucking a little bit of power from the engine, which again, it's kind of self-inflicted harm that it has to overcome. And then, we're avoiding all these leaks because the manual one, you just, you don't stuff it full of grease, but you pack plenty of grease in there. And then it's good for an extremely long time, especially after we change out the bushings. There's the only flaw with these manual racks is they tend to eat up their factory bushings. It's a very soft, kind of nylon plastic bushing that's inside the steel tube on the passenger end. And it's just so soft, and its composition is such that just from years alone of existence, it decays. And that's before we even consider the grease that's inside the tube, because I'm pretty sure it's a high petroleum plastic. So the grease is probably eating away at the plastic. The plastic itself is such that it just breaks down over time. It's a plastic that sweats and then crumbles. A lot of things like brake fluid are like that, but plastics is kind of rare these days. So we replace that. It's pretty easy. Like I said, I pop open the boot. I slide the whole rack to one side, clean out best I can with a screwdriver or something, insert a buttload of grease, make sure my fitment is good, tap in the new bushing, put the boot back on, and this all goes in the car, and we're ready to go. We got steering again, which is awesome. Then once I'm all done with that, this car is due for wheel bearings, so it's going to get those and brakes, and then it will be ready for an alignment. So I'll do it the best I can myself, and then we'll send it into the pros. But I'm super excited for this. It's about time I have some easier service on this wagon here, and the feel and response is going to be much better too. I like that. So we'll catch you later. If you do have any ideas about future videos, do please let me know. This whole summer we've been trying as best as we can to grind through some of these cars, but the weather just has not been cooperating. But we've been making a bunch of videos as we tackle stuff for the first time, or find better ways of approaching things. So we've been spitting out as many videos as we can. It's actually been a bunch as far as doing mechanical work goes. We've been covering a bunch. So I'll let you guys be, but if you have any suggestions for future videos, please say something. I'm always looking for them because I make these for you. I don't make these because I'm bored. I don't make them for the likes. I make them to make sure that people are getting the help they need. So if you're needing help, reach out, say something, whether it's in the comments, write me personally to my email, or if you have other ways of getting to me, well, you probably know me on a regular basis, and it's just Andy. So we will catch you guys later, and we'll see you then.